So that should be recording now. Yeah.
Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Scrutiny working group on digital inclusion. First of all, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Joe Hale and Alison Pugh, the Cabinet member.
Right.
We also have a roll call. If I just call out people's names, if they can just say they're here. I've got Councillors Leslie Walton.
Yep.
Mark Child.
Yep.
David Kellywell.
Yes.
Terry Hennigan. Chris Holly.
Present.
Jeff Jones.
Yes, yeah.
Hazel Morris. We also have invited today Cabinet member for this aspect, Andrew Stevens. We have Cabinet member for supporting communities, Louise Gibbard.
Yeah, hi.
Also invited were Sarah Lackenbury and Liz Shellard.
Present.
And I believe I can see Adam Hill here as well at the bottom there. Okay,
Present.
thank you. All done.
Okay. Any disclosure of personal or prejudicial interests? No. Okay, great. Prohibition of whipped votes and declaration of party whips. That's just a formality, yes, Michelle?
Yeah. If no one declares, then you just move on. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Public question time. I gather we haven't had any questions sent in. Is that
No
right?
public questions received. No.
Okay. So item 5, the convener's letter. It's the first item in your papers. If I may kick off, I would like to ask the relevant officers just to have a quick go through the issues that were actually in this letter. I appreciate it, this is 4 years ago, but I have looked at them and they are all still relevant to now. And by all means, if you feel that there's reference that in the report that you've provided, by all means, feel welcome to refer back to that report. So Sarah or Liz, whichever one you want to kick off first. So that's page 2, if you would. Thank you.
I haven't got the full pack, but I have got the convener's letter in front of me.
Right.
So just to check, we're talking about the 22nd of March 2017?
Oh, gosh. Trying to look at the date. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, there are several things, Councillor Walton, that are picked up in the report. But if I run through the issues, so if we start with the need to move people towards digital channels. Now, we are definitely offering people an online channel rather than forcing people down that route. Unlike the banks, for instance, during the coronavirus crisis last year. I mean, the current report obviously goes into detail on the support channels that were available to people in the emergency helpline, for example, for those who weren't digitally included, especially the support around the shielding people. So I think, is that full enough, or do you want me to expand further on that?
I think it's a question that I think is, from my point of view, is one of the biggest reasons why I raised this topic in the first place.
Yes.
And that's been my ongoing concern, that there will be some people for all sorts of reasons who will never be either able at all or even anywhere proficient at using a computer. And so we have got to, as a council, first acknowledge that and to deal with it. So yes, it's part of that. I think, as you say, if we then go through the report you've put together, I think there are various pickup points that will probably hone it
naturally
on
progress.
specifics through that. But yeah, I mean, it's good to know that you're still looking at that and still appreciate that that's an absolute priority. So
yeah, certainly, whether that's a language barrier or whether that's, you know, a physical or learning disability, you know, there are going to be people that are not going to be able to get online, and either for them directly or their carers, there will always be, you know, resources available. We're not going to be saying, no, you can only access online. There will always be that customer support for them through different channels. So yeah, we certainly, you know, it's always an offer rather than a demand that people go online. So yes, yeah, rest assured that that's always, you know, customer services is always in the forefront of our minds, and especially around that.
right, okay, Sarah, you want to chip in?
Yes, thanks. Yes, just to reiterate what Liz is saying, that, you know, it is about a multi-channel approach. So yes, obviously, if people can do online, that's obviously good, because people can get access to it 24/7. But the contact centre as well. So being able to help people over the phone is a really big, important part of what we try and do, and especially when we're trying to help people fill out you know, benefits forms or blue badge forms or anything like that. I think one of the challenges we also have as a council is some of these aren't our own services to a certain extent, that actually we're trying to help people with some forms which are other people. So obviously when, as you know, the bus passers went online only, and that wasn't us, that was a sort of national initiative. But obviously what we try and do, we try and help people. You know, same with blue badges. You know, we try and help people with any national form that we can, so that, you know, people aren't disadvantaged, or signpost to other people wherever we can. But definitely for our own services, you know, yes, I think people find it, if they can, they find it convenient. And even if what we found in COVID is family members helping people as well, you know, there's definitely been an increase in that. Also, you know, local area coordinators and carers helping, but definitely the aim is to support people, so everybody's got a range of channels that they can access, and whatever's convenient for them.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, just to come in and echo a couple of Sarah's points. Really, you know, we were all involved in some shape or form in the volunteering efforts in our communities, and there's a huge amount of work that went on there. You know, with the LACs and the volunteer networks who knew where the isolated people were, and especially elderly residents in the communities, you know, and supported them in order to get online, whether that's via family members or helping them directly. And there's also, you know, it's having a streamlined online service and online offering will actually, you know, reduce pressure in other areas, perhaps via the contact centre or phone or emails and things like that, you know, so it should actually make things a lot streamlined.
Right, thank you, Louise.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to draw the panel's attention really to I think a lot of this overlaps quite nicely with the work that the Equality Scrutiny Inquiry did, which then fed into the Strategic Equality Plan. And I know that Councillor Holly and Councillor Jones, for example, looked at that as part of the, I can't remember which scrutiny panel it was, but I've been to a lot of them. But we looked at it in that as well, and we, you know, had really good input into that from carers groups, disabled groups, and things like that. Who and we, you know, as it goes on into the report, things are being reviewed with that in mind, because digital inclusion is not just about the sort of financial side of it. It's about the accessibility and making sure that people are able to use our facilities as and when they want it. And I think as Councillor Stevens just said, you know, a lot of work went in over the pandemic, and we've definitely learnt loads of lessons as part of that, and that's going to really inform what we do going forward. And you know, I think it's opened a lot of doors, and in fact people have been forced a little bit to become a bit more confident online through the pandemic, and I think some people have thrived under it. You know, a lot of disabled people have said, you know, in the past that they've been shut out from cultural events and things like that, but now they can join from their own living room. So So there's lots of different aspects to this. You know, we can celebrate as well as look at the negatives from it in a way.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know if you're taking questions. You know, just to clarify, Sarah actually said, you know, there'll always be a resource, you know, to accommodate people that don't go online or whatever. And Andrew said it actually streamlines. Are there response times, you know, for both channels, you know, either digitally or, shall we say, manually, letters and so on? You know, I know everything is speeded up with regards to online, but what sort of response times do the people who write into the council actually receive? You know, is it far, or shall we say, less superior than the online responses?
It's based generally, each service area has got its own time limits for replying. Obviously, some are more statutory, so freedom of information and that so on. But generally, they'll say 5 working days, and that or you know, or similar. They might be quicker than that, but they'll make that clear whether that's online or whether that's by letter. Subject to the variations of the post anyway.
And just to add, I mean, one thing that we are trying to do, I've mentioned before about our ambitions around having the Swansea account. So we have a Swansea account now where, you know, any resident can you know, sign up and log in. If you think about, you know, any kind of other account you might have with another organisation, but the plan is over several years, you'll see everything, all interactions with your council in one place then, whether you've logged a missed bin or whether you've requested a blue badge or bulk waste collection, whatever it might be, or a planning application. The idea would be to have all of these under your Swansea account so you can log in securely, and it's a way of us also communicating securely with residents, so we're not relying on insecure channels like letters or email or anything like that. But in there, you see, as we move forward, the plan is also that people can get more automated responses, or that the responses are actually within the account, so people can see updates themselves as to where their bulky waste collection might be, or what date they've been allocated, or those kind of things. So obviously we're a bit away from that yet. That's not there yet, but the plan is over the next few years that functionality and that timeliness will grow.
Thank you. Mark, you wanted to chip in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It seems to me that of digitally excluded, and COVID has accelerated that to such an extent that there is only a small minority of people who are digitally excluded now in Swansea, and the approach needs to change from looking at groups that might be digitally excluded to looking for individuals who are digitally excluded, seeing if they can be included, or making sure they've got a structured alternative to that digital inclusion. Because although digital is a choice, for some it will remain, as the Chair said, not a choice, but that is an ever decreasing number. And I think what we need to be moving from is not digital inclusion, but digital equality. We need to ensure that everybody's getting the most they can, should they be able to access, you know, so they understand the system, so the system is presented to them clearly, like a new website, for example, and perhaps a Swansea account and that sort of thing, and that the new strategy perhaps shouldn't even be called digital inclusion, it should be called digital equality. I just wondered what you thought of that.
Louise?
I really like that suggestion. I don't know about colleagues, but because I think Mark makes a good point, and I think it's important to realise as well that whereas the numbers of people accessing the internet are increasing, I think we do also need to be mindful of how people are accessing the internet. I think a lot of people are reliant on mobile phones rather than laptops and PCs. They're using mobile data rather than you know, broadband at home and things like that. So I mean, that's also something that we've got to be aware of, that we're not making it expensive for people to get online inadvertently if we have sort of flashy websites and videos and things like that that eat up a lot of data. So I think the digital equality equality is a really important way of looking at it, really. So I think that's great. Sorry, I appreciate that I'm not the digital side, I'm the equality side, so I don't work I can't comment on that bit.
Yeah, I support the idea of calling it digital equality. I think that sums it up a lot better, because as you say, it's not just including people on digital channels, but also recognising others. The part of the strategy has got to be for everybody. So it's a good, both terms are quite good, but I quite like the idea of equality. Sorry, Sarah, I butted in.
Yeah, I think that's great. I echo your view, Chair. I think that's really good. And I think just on the equality bit as well, and again, I know we're straying into digital, apologies, but the equality is also people's ability to access good infrastructure, because the thing that COVID has shown, I mean, obviously it's not been terrible across City and County Swansea in terms of access, but it could be better in certain areas. You know, there are some areas which have very poor access to good quality broadband, so they are relying on mobile, as you say, Councillor Gibbard, just because they can't get good broadband, or vice versa, they get good broadband but they can't get good mobile signal. And it's part of what we're trying to do again on the City Deal digital infrastructure programme, is to try and look at how we can improve that across the board, and with other funding which we might be able to access, and conversations that we're having with Welsh Government all the time. So it links into so many other things.
Thanks. Liz?
Thank you. Yes, I completely agree. I think because we've come on in leaps and bounds since we started the Get Swansea Online Digital Inclusion Programme in 2013, and you know, I do, as Councillor Child has said, you know, we are looking more to target individuals, or you know, very small groups. So, for example, you know, making sure that people like those applying for EU citizens applying, you know, through the citizenship scheme, can actually access, you know, whether they are digitally included or not, they can get help through the libraries, or, you know, we're clearly signposting. And on the accessibility front, Councillor Gibbard, you know, we've had a couple of chats about it. And yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of our vulnerable groups are looking to, you know, their main access is on smartphones. So we have got to make sure that, you know, the data used on the actual website is low. And we need to look at things like usage of PDFs, both in terms of accessibility for those using screen readers, and, you know, the physical size of these downloads that we're asking people to view sometimes, because it's not just that we're asking them to use data. If we've got consultation documents, you know, which are, you know, 20, 30, 40 megabytes that they're having to download, are they really going to look at those? And then are they going to be included in the wider conversation and actually be able to, you know, have their voice through the consultation? So it's all of those aspects that we do bear in mind.
Thank you. Chris, you raised a question in our pre-meeting, and I wondered if you'd like to mention it now about accessibility, particularly following on from this discussion about hardware.
Yeah, you know, some years ago there was a discussion about having public access to touchscreens. Not just in libraries, but in, you know, in windows on particular shops, or in community centres or what have you, where you had a programme where you could log on to look for council services. I understand we haven't gone very far in that, and it in some respects it is quite a change in some of the things that we would do. But is there any chance that we could have a look at it, because it then opens it up entirely to people who can use touchscreens but find it very difficult to do anything else. And on the equalities part, and taking Louise's piece, what she said, she's right, we had that discussion in the Scrutiny Programme Board, where we talked about how inclusion should be about everything, including people with, dare I say, the inability to use a computer but could use a touchscreen. So I think when we actually start talking about hardware, etc., can we make sure that we have that sort of facility available for people, even if it's only in public libraries or in in community centres?
Anyone want to come in on that? Liz? Sarah?
I'm not aware of what's going on. Obviously there's a lot of technology going in around the arena and in the city centre. I'm not aware of touch screens, but I may just not be up to speed with that aspect of it. But certainly in the libraries, we can have that conversation, and certainly iPads and have those available for people to use. They have actually been doing that during click and collect, I believe. They have been offering some services through iPads, because obviously they can disinfect them easily as well. But I'll double check on that, and I can get back to you with an answer.
Yeah, the lifelong learning team did quite a bit on this previously, didn't they? I think.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there's always been a tablet program running alongside the PC, courses, and they have handed out a lot of digital devices. They've been handing out iPads and MiFi devices where needed. Obviously, education have been doing the same, where there's been households that have needed that for the children, and also the Swansea working teams have done a lot. There's been a programme which I've touched on in the report to actually provide MiFi devices and tablets to people. And I agree, touchscreen for a lot of people is a lot easier, and it provides that, especially with a tablet, because obviously it's not as perceived as being as complicated as a smartphone. So yes, there is a lot of that provision going on already. It's just the public touchscreens is the bit that I'll have to get some answers on.
I think one could probably guess that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes with regard to the actual hardware, the technology, because of course technology zaps along like a speed of light, and before you know it, we won't have been using tablets, and we'll be saying, what's a computer? I mean, well, in fact, some kids say that now, don't they? That the hardware that they use, they wouldn't know what a computer, that word, actually refers to at all. So, yeah, if you can find out a bit more and get back to us, that would be great. Thanks, Liz. Louise?
Thank you. Just following on from that, I just wanted to make the point that Councillor Pugh asked me to raise as she's not able to come today. Obviously, lifelong learning are in her part of the portfolio. But just to point out, as Liz said, they've been doing a lot of work in terms of giving out devices and doing these courses, which have all been free online throughout COVID, and demand for actually quadrupled during that time. A lot of that was funded by Welsh Government, and obviously that's really helped. But lifelong learning are, really keen to be getting back to face-to-face things, because if people haven't got essential skills of literacy and numeracy, it doesn't matter, how proficient they are online if they can't read what's on there, or they don't understand the language in the first place. So like we said before, it's digital inclusion is so caught up in all other kinds of inclusion and equality, as Councillor Child said. So I just wanted to add that point.
Okay, Liz, sorry, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, it was just to echo the point. It's not just the lifelong learning have done so much over the past year, and they've done a lot of support by telephone. And it was just to highlight the triaging of services, especially for those that were shielding. Making sure that people had food primarily, and they could get their prescriptions. And obviously, then another aspect of it was, if they asked for help for getting online, then they were spending a lot of individual time with people. It wasn't just one phone call. It may have been, it was a very small amount of people, really. I think it was about 79 people, but they were giving them very individual help over a period of time. So it wasn't just one contact. And I just wanted to highlight as well the the really great way that the counsellors and the LACs and Swansea Working and all the different groups involved and lifelong learning were making sure that they referred people back to the financial inclusion officer or referred them back to welfare rights if necessary, so that they were getting all the help that they could, and that safety net, even though they couldn't meet them face to face. There was, right in the report, I just really brought back the amount of stuff that was actually going on, and it did feel like residents were supported. We had no corporate complaints about access to services during that time, which I think is just amazing, considering the pressure that everybody was under. And I do feel that the amount of work that obviously the counsellors were doing in communities and the officers were doing, it felt like everybody was really pulling together and was just doing a really good job for the citizens.
Yeah, I totally echo that. What experience I've had and feedback I've had, I would say the vast majority of staff have done amazing, absolutely amazing over the last year, and all credit to them. I can't praise them enough myself. So anyway, it just occurred to me that we've only gone through one bullet point so far, so maybe if we could have a sort of quick skip through these, and again I'm sure you have picked them up in the report, but maybe you can just make sure that we know that they're there in the report. So Liz, do you want to carry on, and hopefully we can then get on to the next item? Thanks.
Yes. No problem. The language of digital inclusion needs to be carefully considered. We should not be educating or telling people, but definitely I think we've covered that we're offering choices, and we're trying not to be say, oh, you've got to do this online. There's always an alternative, and we're not we might list the website first, but we're not hiding the phone number or the email for further information or what have you. Overall levels of digital inclusion. Now that's difficult to capture unless it's from ONS reports, because ONS do a lot of surveying. We can, especially through COVID, obviously we've got a better idea of exactly who is excluded and who may need additional help, and frankly, who doesn't want help. And obviously the LACs are key to identifying this, but ONS data is key, and I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. As highlighted in the report, we know that the past year it's just been sort of very reactive, and now it's time to go back to the framework and review that and see what figures get the latest figures, basically. The needs of the different groups. So we're covering this by obviously the new IIA is helping with that overall framework. We need to carefully look at, we are carefully looking at, especially with the new website, accessibility, as we touched upon earlier. We do need to go back to the data that everybody's holding. But again, the landscape has changed an awful lot in the past year. So that framework will, as I said, we just need to put the additional figures in and make sure that we update the framework. The partnership approach, I think Public Services Board, I think all the organisations that we've been working with and our partnership organisations, especially SCVS and the NHS, those partnerships have been strengthened over the past year. We are working very, very closely with a lot of the partnership organisations, and a lot of faith in families and the sort of family orientated support services, and I think both with, as the report touches on, that we've trained or we've organised training for, or been part of the organisation which has organised training for a lot of staff as well as community groups themselves, so that our staff can actually facilitate online sessions and that sort of thing better. And of course, you know, the partnership approach with SCVS, for example, that was key in providing prescription deliveries and that sort of thing during last year. The cross-generational stuff, that has obviously with COVID, that's gone on hold. So that needs to be picked up again. So I have, you know, we can come back with what education have got planned going forward, and you know, what we plan. But at the moment, you know, with the gradual reintroduction of face-to-face, it's going to take a little while for that to be able to happen. Basically, it's very much informal at the moment. One thing though that has come out of last year is that the amount of Facebook groups, you know, localized Facebook groups that have provided online support to people who have been offering online support, you know, even if it's like over the fence to a neighbour, that sort of promotion that the councillors were doing a lot of to make sure that people were aware of these groups, and the ability for Facebook groups and other online groups to actually start doing the lunch clubs or the, you know, the digital help and that sort of thing for those that were offline. And just, you know, that really helped in the communication to make sure that people knew that those services were available. The language, that is an interesting one. Obviously, we're bound by the Welsh measures for Welsh language. What we've been doing is basically, for some, if things are online, then if somebody is, you know, their first language is French or Tagalog or whatever, then if they're using something like Google or Bing, it will offer to translate the web page for them. Obviously, some languages are better in Google Translate than others by far, but it offers a way of people accessing the pages as long as they're not password protected, and, you know, as long as they're not in PDFs and so on. If they're actual web pages, it's not ideal, but it does at the moment offer, you know, some accessibility. What we'll do once the new website is live is have a look at, you know, we know what our you know, the main languages that are used in on the website, and we can look to start providing more content in other languages. But a lot depends on the services as well, and seeing what value the services place in that, because they, you know, leaflets and things like that could be already translated and we just don't know about it. We've just got to go back to the services and ask for that information so we can add it back on. So yeah, Google and Bing, not ideal, but, you know, it does allow people in, you know, all the different languages that are supported, to at least get an idea and be able to, even on the forms on the website, they are actually able to see what, you know, roughly what they are filling in. So the next point, yeah, this point is about needing to ensure that those moving to online services are not missing out on the advice. Again, what we're trying to do on the new website is build on what we've got on the existing site. We've got a lot of information within pages or within PDFs that on the new site we're actually building into a search facility, which is grouped by category. So, for example, if people have got money worries or debt issues, we've got a whole collection of information there that will help them. So that's signposting to third-party organisations, as well as our own services, and making sure that we get the connections right on the website. And again, offline then, the LACs and Swansea Working lifelong learning, all these different groups are really working together to make sure that people are signposted to the right people at the right time. Because obviously, you know, if we're talking about digital exclusion, then we need to be targeting those people that really need that help. So, you know, two-pronged approach there, both online and offline, to make sure that we've got that safety net for people. The privacy and security is an interesting one. We're building up. We've got quite a big library of scams. Whenever we see a current scam, we work with trading standards to get that onto the website, and also work with comms to get that out onto social media and things. And they are some of the really popular posts that on social media. The lifelong learning training also, they always include security and keeping yourself online, safe online, within their training. And the new training packages that they're using have got specific safety and security modules as well, and things around phishing. And of course, you know, in ICT, we're going to be running phishing, highlighting phishing as an issue within emails, and doing a test phishing campaign basically. Comms went out last week about that, so that'll be interesting to see the results. But you know, things are getting more and more sophisticated, and you know, the more aware people are, then you know, we'll be able to hopefully counter a lot of those issues. But as I said, you know, whenever we put anything out about scams, it gets shared a lot, and you know, we're trying to raise the awareness as much as possible with every new scam, especially if they're purporting to be, you know, connected to the council, because then it's a reputational issue for us as well.
If I can just interrupt on that point, of course, the concern about security could well be a good reason why some people won't go on the internet, won't use website, won't use email. And up to a point, I can't say I would blame them for that approach. So I think that's another thing that we need to consider, because that's why we are having to make sure we offer other ways of communication rather than just relying on online. Sorry, Mark, yeah?
Yeah, it's one of the things I mentioned earlier before in the pre-meeting, is scams and all kinds of abuse that can take place online. I mean, clearly it's not necessarily our job to protect everybody from everything online, but it would somehow, some of it falls within us, and if it's not our job, whose is it? To just make people aware of the scams, which is something that is really popular, and it goes on my local community council website as soon as I send it to them as well, when I get it. It's the fraud that takes place and people's vulnerability to that. Exploitation for safeguarding reasons and whatever, bullying, gambling. There are all kinds of ways which people need to be made aware of and have some kind of defense mechanism to prevent them being exploited in these ways. And even if it's not directly our responsibility, all of it, we need to, if we've got advice, maybe on the council website, about how to be safe online, you know, that sort of thing. It's included in the courses. It's included in any other sort of digital contact we have with people. Be safe. Make sure, double check, don't give out numbers, don't give out passwords, all that kind of stuff, the basics, to try and help people stay safe. Because that, you know, Chair's right, people are frightened and people are exploited, and people are, it is the most rapidly growing element of crime in the UK.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Right. Last point, I think.
Yeah, the campaigns, we haven't, well, to be honest, in the past 12 months, we haven't had to do any of those particular campaigns, because there has been a very large increase in the number of people naturally migrating online, as Sarah was alluding to earlier. But certainly, if we're talking about, you know, targeting certain groups, or, you know, certain communities who might be, you know, they might be eligible for funding, or they might be eligible for something, then yes, certainly we can do that. We can do that through demographic advertising. We use it for instance, on Facebook. You can narrow down the age group that you're advertising to. You can choose whether you're advertising to men or women. I mean, we tend to do everybody, and you can narrow it down to geographic areas as well. So you can do it by postcode area, etc. For example, we do it for Foster Swansea with quite a lot of success. So you know, that certainly is possible through online advertising, and then offline obviously is much easier, because if you need to reach people, then there are offline channels that can be used, and obviously the lax on the ground, etc. So yes, there's you know, we can look at that on a case by case basis. You know, in the when the new website goes live.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. What I would suggest then, if we go on to item 6, assuming that we have the members have actually read through this, I would suggest, over to you again, if you want to go through it, highlight anything you feel that you haven't covered, and by all means, people chip in if and when you want to make a comment or ask a question. Is that okay again? And Andrew, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it was just to say, quick, Chair. Sorry, I cut out then of all the meetings to cut out as well. So.
Oh dear. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a faux pas, isn't it, really?
Yes, my internet went down.
Okay. Okay, over to Liz again, or Sarah, whichever.
Yeah, no, I can. I muted myself. No, just double checking.
Are we on the report now?
Yes. Yeah.
We are. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say a couple of things. That's all. Just before you come in, I was just going to say thanks for inviting me to the committee today. Sorry for the internet trouble anyway, but it's great to see the interest, you know, our members are showing in digital inclusion, which I'm sure will have a great impact on how we work our services going forward. I just wanted to refer to some of the details on the report that show just how much work has gone on since the start of the pandemic. And although work had been done prior to COVID on digital inclusion framework and our Get Swansea online courses, I think all members would agree that things have certainly accelerated with all things digital in the last 14 months. It's a fact that we're not really alone in this, and there are a number of other sectors which have actually had a lot of people shifting online. And I think it's true that a lack of digital skills and access can have a huge impact on a person's life, whether that's social isolation or less access to jobs and education. And that goes for pre, during or post-pandemic. And those already at a disadvantage through age, education, income, disability or unemployment are most at risk of missing out, which actually makes addressing digital exclusion, digital inequality all the more important. And it's great to see we're making great strides in this regard. I'm sure you'll appreciate the amount of work that's gone into the report, and my thanks to the officers on the call, Sarah and Liz, for all they've done in pulling this together. I wasn't going to say any more on that, Chair, but I'm not sure if Councillor Gibbard wanted to add anything further.
No, thank you. I'll chip in if something occurs to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. I mean, I think I'd like to reinforce it's sad in a way that such a severe pandemic has actually speeded up looking at how best to offer the digital services that we've got. But on the other hand, let's embrace the fact that it has managed to speed things up, and we have probably progressed an awful lot in the last year, probably far more so than we did in the previous 3. So and thanks to all the work that everybody's been doing behind the scenes. Okay, let's have a look through the report then. Over to you, Liz. Thanks.
Lovely. So yes, the landscape has basically changed rapidly. Obviously, pre-pandemic, the digital inclusion strategic framework was presented to the financial inclusion group, and you know, the figures speak for themselves there. But obviously, as I've said, we do need to do a lot more work to see what the landscape is going to look like after COVID, because of demographic changes, as well as the effect that the acceleration due to COVID of getting people online. The Get Swansea Online courses, they were great for the, you know, for the people, for the demographic that were coming forward, you know, generally over 65s, getting online for various reasons, wanting to transact online or get a better deal online, or, you know, keep up with friends and family. But what we were finding was that they were getting harder and harder to recruit to. You know, we were overbooked for the first 4 years, but you could really see the change happening. And what we were finding was that more and more people were coming to us that actually needed help with very specific things. So like Swansea Working, you know, wanted more about the Microsoft Office tools, or you know, creating a CV, you know, really how to do Excel, and, you know, that sort of, you know, introductory type thing. So what we were able to do was we applied for funding from the Goodwill Foundation, and we got that to be able to use the Learn My Way. It was sponsored by BT, and it's a really good, engaging series of courses. And as I said, you know, it's got security in there. There's all sorts of courses that can be done, right through to the very, very basics. So it can be used for people that have got no digital skills whatsoever. So, you know, how to use a mouse, and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So pre-pandemic, Lifelong Learning as well were attending regular face-to-face Swansea Working drop-in sessions. So that was good. They were recruiting people onto the Get Swansea online courses, and were able to, they were taking devices with them, so they could actually go through some of the Learn My Way courses, which was something for, you know, job seekers to actually be able to put onto their universal credit records, and, you know, gain the skills that they needed. And a lot of people were getting recruited onto sort of more advanced IT courses, which are all free through Lifelong Learning as well. Digital inclusion for staff is an important one, because we need to be able to, for staff to be able to feel confident to actually help people. So that was, you know, pre-COVID, in the zone, in the contact centre. And assisted digital over the phone. So if somebody was calling the contact centre, we'd be able to actually help them while they were going through something online. Obviously then, when COVID came along, ICT did a lot of work, education did a heck of a lot of work, just trying to get as many devices out, and especially in education, MiFi devices, just to make sure that people could work from home and pupils could access their learning. And the home working survey had a really good response rate, and they felt that they didn't need ICT training. And the Teams usage just jumped so much. The use of email jumped, so that was all very positive. We did find there were specific groups of people, especially lifelong learning tutors, and people that were working with a lot of the family groups. They did actually need some extra support just to get some ideas and upskill, so they were able to deliver sessions to families, and the tutors were able to deliver their courses. So they were upskilled in things like Google Classrooms. And the family teams were had sessions on Zoom and on Microsoft Teams to be able to deliver really nice sessions, whether they were cookery or in the case of lifelong learning, they were doing a lot of blended stuff. So the tutors were producing videos, and they were actually doing some Teams-based stuff and Google Classrooms-based stuff live with people. So there were a lot of resources that they were developing themselves. So obviously there was a lot of upskilling in a very short space of time for those members of staff. Obviously at the beginning of COVID, there was a lot of the emergency support line for shielding residents was set up, and that was quite a lot of work in a very short space of time, but obviously needed to be done before the letters were going out from Welsh Government. There was confusion around the supermarkets, which I'm sure you'll remember very well. And I think the emergency call centre received 3,823 contacts up to the closure on the 23rd of August last year. Local area coordinators took almost 23,000 inquiries, and the food help team 850 requests for help. It was just a phenomenal response all around. The digital inclusion for residents, we were concentrating on the shielding people, and we were making sure that information and signposting was online for those that could self-serve. But making sure there was that safety net for people as well. And obviously the contact centres, ICT had done a lot of work to put all the contact centres online, which a lot of government organisations and other councils weren't able to achieve. But obviously, the Agile Working Project in previous years really laid the foundation for that. And the use of the Microsoft products and things we already had in place. So it was, I say it's relatively easy to scale up, but that was able to be accelerated really quickly, which was amazing. Education, obviously, as I've said in the report, that was a lot of that. The issues there were, if there were multiple, if the parents were working from home, parents were working from home, and there were multiple children just trying to use the same devices, that could be an issue in homes. They provided a lot of MiFi dongles and devices to enable people to be able to work at different times of day, and obviously the teachers were producing not only doing face-to-face sessions, but making sure that the resources were there so that pupils could access them outside of the normal school working hours, to make sure that they were all accessible as possible. The employability teams did a survey. It was summer last year, so it was the peak of lockdown. They did the survey on behalf of Welsh Government. And the figures look a bit alarming to start with, because they said approximately 22% of the 72 people receiving support during the survey felt that they were digitally included. The majority of these said it was because they were reliant on public access PCs. They were in the libraries and getting help from library staff a lot of the time, or they were doing the drop-in sessions with Swansea Working, or a mixture of both. And they didn't have their own device or broadband. This figure, though, was similar across Wales. And what I haven't said in the report is that some of those people, some of the survey results were from carers looking after people with severe learning difficulties. So they were in the work programmes, but they weren't, talking about digital literacy is one thing, but their normal literacy levels were compromised as well. So that figure, isn't as bad as it first appears, and it was resolved quite quickly because devices were able to be supplied. The ICT loan scheme for communities came about, so that was that's live now in Swansea, and computers and tablets and dongles are being loaned out to people in need. And again, there's a lot of cross referrals back to lifelong learning, then to upskill people through the free courses. The life stages teams, they were echoing what we were doing with we were working with Digital Communities Wales, so we were making sure that we were advertising online and amplifying their messages online about their free courses that were available as well. So the 50 plus group had a lot of information from the life stages teams, just to make sure, just to help disseminate all the information, and making sure that they were able to get the information that was online, if they were not digitally included. Lifelong learning's figures speak for themselves, really. And again, as I said, the tutors received a lot of support themselves to be able to deliver the classes. They completely changed their way of working, and it's been very, very successful over the past year, amazingly successful. Again, they've loaned out digital equipment to make sure that people can take part in the ICT courses as well. And they've also they worked with JISC to be able to improve their staff skills. I think I mentioned earlier on, they did have on the coronavirus help pages, we advertised that there was help available from lifelong learning. So what we were finding was people were perhaps contacting us on behalf of their parents, and lifelong learning were able to contact those people and provide them with very specific help. And it might have been a cross referral to the food team, and helping them to get a delivery slot with the supermarkets, or just to guide them through being able to actually use Skype or Zoom that they'd never used before, just getting them set up through that process so they could actually chat to their families and things, and obviously with the mental health benefits that brings. And again, the Learn My Way programme that carried on, offering the ICT training and 181 learners on free IT courses. And that was including, from the very, very beginners up to the stage 3 courses. So that was really great figures considering everything else that was going on last year.
Can I just interrupt, back on this point of the change that has happened to what training is required, whereas as you say, years ago there were lots of people who actually just wanted basic IT training, whereas from what you're saying now, it's a completely different picture. It's far more individual, and there's far more different types of IT access, as you say, Skype, as opposed to actual programs like Word and Excel. There's such a vast range. Do you see that we're going to be able to continue to cope with dealing with that? Because it's requiring a huge amount of flexibility, isn't it, in being able to offer that vast range to all sorts of people, all sorts of ages, etc., etc.
Yeah, it is a bit of an issue, and it brings up security issues and things alongside that. For example, at the very beginning of coronavirus, Zoom really took off, and there were reports of people's meetings getting hacked into, and all of that sort of thing. So it's a big learning curve for everybody, because the staff involved, we get asked stuff all the time, and you've got to learn it yourself before then you provide the material and things. But really it's a mixture of things. For example, for staff members, there was a lot of information produced on Microsoft Teams, how to use chat, and Microsoft were adapting really quickly themselves, because obviously they were trying to keep up with Zoom. So there were new features coming up all the time, you know, like we now all put our hands up, which, you know, 12 months ago that didn't exist. So we were doing updates through the ICT. There was a daily ICT update of, you know, what was going on, and help documents provided and things. But then, you know, the big companies, a lot of the time you are able to say, well, if you let me Google this for you, and you will actually find, you know, the help available online. So it's pushing back slightly and saying to people, you know, I have looked on Google for you, and this is where I found the information, in a nice way, you know, saying, you know, this is how you can do it yourself the next time. So, you know, we can't be all things to all people, but we are as helpful as possible. And there are alternatives to us finding out the information, you know, and regurgitating it in our own documents. If it's online, then we'll signpost to it, and that will go for, you know, it'll go for information that we put on the website or on StaffNet, and what we're actually telling people through the help desk.
But that still requires you to do that initial prompt, even if you can then get the person to help themselves, which of course is far better, far more, because they've got then far more sense of achievement. So I mean, I think it's, but I can see it's still quite a big ask that you're probably getting so many individual questions, queries, training requests. So I can see it's a bit of a task.
It's you know, in ICT we do get asked a variety of questions, and we've got to consider it from all angles, whether that's security or you know, viability to roll it out to large amounts of people, or, you know, it's even down to, you know, where the data is going and where it's being stored and that sort of thing. We have got to consider a lot of things at the same time before we decide, yes, that's going to be fine. For example, you know, that we did have a lot of discussion around the use of WhatsApp. So certain client groups obviously are comfortable using WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or what have you. But we've got to be mindful that, you know, we've got staff guidelines in place to say, you know, do not use, you know, no personal information goes on there about, you know, somebody's case or what have you. It is just literally to set up a meeting, or set up a, you know, a time to call them or what have you. So, you know, as long as there are those guidelines in place and due diligence has been done, then, you know, we're willing to adapt to help, you know, whether temporarily due down to COVID or on a more permanent basis. But yes, there are, thank you for acknowledging that, Chair, because there are a lot of questions, and a lot of you know, a lot of work rapidly has to take place just to make sure that we've got a consistent answer for people.
Right, thank you.
I'm almost done. It's quite a long report. Yeah, I think I've mentioned before the digital training across the partner organisations, so I won't dwell on it now. But we're the lead partner in the family support network, and so we organise a lot of training for all the partnership organisations. And, you know, obviously for vulnerable children and vulnerable families, that's you know, they were doing really nice sessions which enabled them to, you know, not have the focus on the help that they were providing, but, you know, just be able to have that chat and that emotional connection whilst doing, you know, a cookery session, or, you know, a play session or a craft session or something like that. So that's had a lot of positive benefits, not just for us, but the partnership organisations as well.
It's good.
The communication through COVID, obviously there was a lot of online communication, but offline through text messaging through GovNotify, which is a relatively new text messaging service, which doesn't cost us anything up to a certain point. So you know, we've been utilising that a lot. So that was great to develop that more during coronavirus. And that was used specifically for the shielding people, to make them aware of the emergency helpline and to make sure that they were able to get help if needed. And the online channels we used, in a lot of cases, we will advertise online, or, you know, promote things online, and just say, you know, even if it's for Get Swansea online courses, to say things like, did you know that you could get help, or, you know, that sort of thing. Or do you know somebody who needs help with getting onto Zoom or doing whatever? And that works really well, because obviously then they'll you know, they'll ring their parents or whatever, just to say that they can get help with various things. And as I said before, the local Facebook groups, and thanks to Councillor Stevens for putting together the list of the Facebook groups that we put on the ward pages on the website, just to make sure that people were aware of them. Again, just to say that the organisation online for offline help through hot meals and, you know, food deliveries and that sort of thing on a local level, and that digital inclusion help was really key. Those Facebook groups, well, I mean, you know, they're still very active in a lot of cases, and they've spawned a lot of really positive activity in communities, and gives people a little bit of that face-to-face contact, you know, especially through full lockdown. And, you know, a hot meal once a week or whatever would make a real difference to a lot of people. We updated the coronavirus pages pretty much every day. We had, I think we created about 137 new pages, and there was the benefits information and stuff was changing every day.
So, sorry, can I just come in?
Yeah.
No, it was the use of WhatsApp and Facebook groups during the pandemic. It proved really good community sort of generating community spirit, community action, and I'm hoping that not just digitally the council's aware of them, but we can use them to start empowering communities to sort of act themselves, and through consultation routes and all kinds of stuff like that, because they've been I doubt there's a community in Swansea that hasn't had at least one local Facebook group set up during this pandemic, and the ones that have been there have been used a lot as well. So I think that they are a tool for us to, because you can't physically knock on every door necessarily, but they're a really good tool for getting the word out there on different local issues, like roads closed or something, the electricity's down, or no, perhaps not the electricity's down, the water's out or whatever. Issues that we might want to make people aware of, that we could use, these little groups to feed into, without necessarily being responsible for running them. I think that would be a mistake. But if we got contacts there, it adds value to them and brings the community together more.
Yeah, just to endorse that, I mean, I think I'm guessing that most councillors, if not all, have tended to use local contacts in their ward who are administrators of Facebook pages, and they have been a huge asset in, as you say, getting information out, particularly things like roads blocked, or, as you say, electricity might be down or whatever. So yes, they have worked. It's worked really well.
Yes, definitely. And we do tend to utilise, really big, as well as the community groups, because obviously they're very key in targeting particular areas by their very nature, but also big Facebook groups like It Only Happens in Swansea, for good or ill. We do put messaging out on there, and we did use it through the coronavirus pandemic. You don't even have to do it, officially as the council, but members of the public, and as members of the public, and replying to people's queries and things. So it has been very useful in that way. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. I was looking at the report on a different screen. Sorry, Councillor Chad.
Drew, sorry, did Andrew?
Yeah, could I just add quick to that? It was the LACs were very heavily involved in a lot of the social media groups, and particularly some of the ones I was involved in around Gower, or the ones I noticed around Gower. And and I'm sure you know in many other areas across Swansea. But it's good to see that there's a number of those groups that started at the start of the pandemic still going as well, you know, and you know there's been a good connection made there, you know, within residents who perhaps didn't know each other at the time. So I think good.
Thank you. Back to you, Liz.
Okay. Yes, we put together a lot of the coronavirus pages with, for example, the food deliveries information that we initially put together, and then our colleagues in Regeneration took that over, and we actually built a form so that businesses could get themselves added onto that list. And that was handy then, because it got picked up by local radio stations and got picked up by the newspaper. So a lot of the information and a lot of the benefits information got disseminated, you know, through their through various channels, and you know, not just sort of isolated onto online. And again, you know, we're doing a lot of sharing of Digital Communities Wales free courses, as well as amplifying the lifelong learning messages. I think, you know, as we've said, the digital inclusion strategic framework needs to be reviewed, and you know, to highlight the shift towards digital channels. And as we've just said with Facebook and things, greater community and family support to help people get online, and make sure that that carries on, and you know, to help those groups just carry on.
Sorry, did you want to come in, Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just wanted to add actually was about the essential suppliers list, and the fact, like, you know, if there was residents in the communities who were particularly digitally excluded, it was actually getting printed out by, you know, a number of community leaders, whether it be at LACS or what have you, and taken around to residents, so they had a physical list of essential suppliers at the start of the pandemic. So, excellent.
Thank you. Just if I can come in on the digital Christ, I can't say it, inclusion strategic framework. Would it be worth actually seeing what it looks like now, so that any of us who might have ideas, suggestions, or whatever comments to make, we can make it now before you necessarily really start looking at what needs amending, what needs changing? Would that be an idea?
Yes,
I personally would certainly like to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. The more feedback, the better.
If you can arrange for that to get circulated to this group, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So, yeah, sorry, keep going. I'll shut up for a minute.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll circulate the framework. That's no problem, and yeah, comments are definitely welcomed on that, because that's going to be quite a big piece of work, and a lot of people are going to have to be consulted on that, just to see exactly what's been changing. So we're into sort of this year and beyond, hopefully beyond COVID. The Tackling Poverty Service is involved with a really good project called Community Calling, which is taking place right now, actually. It's a charity called Hubbub, who refurbish old mobile phones, and they're getting rolled out to vulnerable Swansea residents. So and that comes with a 3 years data, calls and texts, and that'll be interesting, because they're getting reviewed at the start to assess their digital skills, and then again at 6 months, and then at the end of the 12 months. And we're hoping, you know, that I think the Tackling Poverty team are trying to get O2 to extend that a little bit, but that's in its infancy at the moment, so that's really positive. Education, of course, are rolling out even more digital devices. The schools are doing that themselves, using the Welsh Government's grants So I mean, the numbers that they're talking about, we're talking about thousands of devices, which is great. The new council website, we're going to be delivering that in the summer. That's on track at the moment. We're doing a lot of revision of the content to make sure that we're using plain English and plain Welsh, and we're making sure that we're getting the search right. And as I mentioned, I've had a couple of conversations with Councillor Gibbard. We're engaging with the I've been talking to Access to Services, because obviously we need to talk to the accessibility groups. We'd started going to the accessibility groups regularly before COVID, but everything's sort of gone on hold a little bit. But that's key for me, and we need to make sure that accessibility is for everybody. Basically, you might be using your mobile phone in bright sunshine, or you might have a child tucked under your arm, or you might be on crutches, or whatever. And we need to make sure that everybody's catered for. So there needs to be a little bit of staff training. So what I'm looking at doing is, we've already put some information up on StaffNet. There's quite a lot of accessibility stuff, some of which is quite tailored to developers, but some is for some of which we give to the web editors, just to make them think about the different situations that people might be using the internet in, and making sure that things like colour contrast are taken into consideration, the use of accessible Word documents to make sure that people using screen readers, if people have got dyslexia or they've got visual problems, they're able to access the information as well. And getting things out of PDFs really, and getting really key information onto web pages to make sure that it's searchable, so Google can find that information if they're looking for it. And to screen readers will be able to read the new website. It's got a really good accessibility rating, but of course it's only as good as the information, the content that web editors put onto it. So there's education to be done. So we're looking at some tools at the moment, like for instance Site Improve and different Chrome extensions, just so we can demonstrate to web editors why these things are important, to make sure that the pages are up to scratch, because the web team is small. We do a lot of the content, but we can't do all of it. Safeguarding, that's going to... Sorry.
I meant to interrupt on the website. Is there any way we would be able to feed in thoughts on the future of the website?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'm at the moment, because we're doing the content and we've started doing the pretty bits of it, I've got to make sure that it works. So it will look a lot prettier than the existing one, which is looking very dated. But yes, definitely. I mean, it's an ongoing thing as well. So even after it's gone live, we welcome feedback, and I would like to if people are interested in getting involved at the start. I know that Councillor Stevens will definitely be interested, and I'm very open to getting a range of views on the site. It can't turn into sort of design by committee, because obviously we're data driven, so we're looking at and we rely on user testing. So we're looking at the most popular pages and making sure that those are displayed easily, but we need to be making sure that the site search is working and everything is easily findable on Google and Bing. So but yeah, I'd welcome a user group on that, and being able to demonstrate perhaps further on in June, after we've done some initial user testing.
Yeah, that would be fine. We leave it to you to come back to us at that point, and yes, anybody who's interested could get involved at that point. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted. I think you were doing safeguarding.
I was doing safeguarding. Sorry, yes, because I'm looking at this. I can't see who's got their hand up and what have you. So apologies. Yeah, safeguarding, you know, the scam promotion, that sounds wrong, but you know what I mean. The highlighting of scams and online safety is carrying on. I mentioned the staff phishing awareness campaign, which is going to be done in the next few weeks, so that'll be interesting. And that won't be a sort of wrap them over the knuckles type thing. It will very much be a learning exercise. There'll be guidance if somebody does click the links, guidance as to what to look for, to see whether it's a phishing email or not. And obviously get Swansea online, and the Learn My Way courses on safety will always be available, and lifelong learning and Swansea Working really are both, you know, they're making sure that people are aware of the safety aspects when they're talking to them.
Mark, did you want to come in?
Yes, briefly. I mean, we've got the corporate safeguarding steering group in the council. So I just wondered if you'd pass them or on to the group and have a discussion about, just to check that we're getting the range of inputs into the safeguarding as far as you can design.
Sorry, I was losing you a little bit then. You were breaking up.
Sorry. The management house needs an upgrade in its connection, I'm afraid. The next online safeguarding. I just wanted to check that you'd spoken to people on having gone to the safeguarding group. You've spoken to people on it, just so you make sure we're covering every base. Just check in now.
Yeah, I speak to Patrick quite often, and obviously we update the safeguarding pages as well. So I have, whenever there's a new scam and what have you, we make sure that we communicate, and you know, my team is doing our actions, and Pat's team is doing their actions in communications. But I'll definitely make sure that the group's aware, because I haven't spoken to them specifically about that in the past 6 months.
Good. Louise?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to flag up another sort of positive way that we've been using digital on the website for in a sort of safeguarding thing with the domestic abuse chatbot as well, that's been on the site, which has been you know, quite, you know, it was a sort of pilot scheme and I think has worked quite well, where people can access signposting 24/7 if you know, you can, if you're looking for help about yourself or to support somebody else who've got concerns about domestic abuse. So obviously it can't answer specific questions, but it's really, you know, you type things in and you can get answers of where to find more information, and then quickly come out of it and clear it as well, in case you are under threat from an abuser or something. So I just wanted to put a plug for that, because I think that's something fantastic that we've put in over the pandemic.
Good. Back to you, Liz. Last couple.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councillor Gibbard. Yes, how could I forget building that?
No, it's fine. You do so much other stuff. I can't expect her to remember everything. I just like to give that a plug.
Yeah, that was other ICT colleagues as well. But yeah, that was it is well worth it, especially with the figures during the pandemic. Yeah, so the last couple of points, as was mentioned earlier, lifelong learning and Swansea working groups are looking at bringing back face-to-face activities, because obviously that is best when we're talking about digitally excluded people, but obviously that depends on timescales, depends on, you know, what we're able to do at any particular time. So you know, it's good to know that if we are locked down again, touch wood that we won't be, but there are those contingencies in place now that we can fall back on. And the very last point, you'll all be glad to know, is the city deal, which is, you know, the city deal infrastructure, as Sarah mentioned. That's seeking to improve the digital infrastructure, and looking to work with the private sector to invest. And I think the super connected cities and the Internet of Things developments will be very interesting, both in terms of being able to sort of, devices to be able to self-report to us rather than having to have a resident or have a member of staff actually doing that. Will be interesting. We'll be able to hopefully be a leading light in that, because we're leading that project on behalf of the partner councils. Sarah, do you want to come in on that, on anything?
No, I think you covered it. And just as I said before, yeah, it's obviously trying to just improve infrastructure as much as we can. I mean, we often talk about the capability of digital channels, but somebody made a good analogy, which is sometimes where you're talking about a sort of sports car when you haven't actually got the road built yet. So actually you do need, you've got to have good infrastructure in there, because if we don't have that, we can't talk about all the other enablers to digital inclusion. So it is one of those key foundations, but that's definitely what we're working on. I mean, obviously it always needs a lot of investment, and it takes many years to do, but it's a Welsh Government area they're interested in. It's also central government, and also us as a city deal. So we're hoping over the next few years we can make some headway on that. And obviously, yes, the Internet of Things, really interesting and new area for us. But we're working together as partners to look at how we can improve services by using more of that and more automation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both. Any more questions from anybody? Any more comments? Anything? Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's been a very worthwhile session. I think we've learnt a lot. I get the feeling that you're on the right track, that you're doing as much as you possibly can to make the right kind of improvements and progress. So again, thank you very much for coming to this meeting. Much appreciated. I think the idea now is we close this formal meeting, and officers and councillors can leave. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all.
It's not the board members, is it? It's just the...
Right. Yeah, no. Oh well. Yes.
I think all the others are gone.
By the looks
I'll
of it,
stop
yes.
recording now anyway, won't it? Earlier.